In 1298, an Italian merchant sat in a Genoese prison, dictating the wildest stories of his life. He said he'd seen an emperor turn paper into money, real, spendable, enforceable money, and that anyone who refused it would be executed. Nobody believed him. They called his book Il Milione, the Book of a Million Lies. But Marco Polo wasn't lying. He'd just seen something Europe wouldn't understand for another 400 years. Rewind 3 centuries. China's Song Dynasty, around the year 1000. The economy is booming, silk, tea, porcelain, moving across the largest trading network on Earth. But there's a problem. Money is heavy. Coins are made of iron, not silver, because the Song government is short on precious metal. A single string of 1,000 iron coins can weigh over 10 pounds. Buy something expensive, a horse, a shipment of grain, and you need a cart just to carry the payment. In Sichuan province, merchants get creative. Instead of hauling iron coins across mountain roads, they start depositing them with trusted shopkeepers and walking away with a paper receipt instead, a promise written down that the coins are waiting whenever they're needed. These receipts are called jiaozi. At first, they're just IOUs between merchants. But something strange starts happening. People stop cashing them in. Why carry the heavy coins at all, when the paper itself is trusted enough to spend? The receipt becomes the money. Nobody planned this. It happened because paper was easier than metal, and the empire is about to notice. By 1023, the Song government makes a decision that defines currency for the rest of human history. They take over the jiaozi system. No more private merchants issuing their own paper. The state creates an official jiaozi bureau in Chengdu, printing standardized notes backed by a reserve of real coins sitting in a vault. This is, as far as historians can tell, the first government-issued paper currency on Earth, centuries before anything like it exists in Europe. The notes are beautiful, printed with intricate woodblock designs, buildings, trees, tiny figures, all to make them nearly impossible to forge. Forgery, by the way, is punishable by death. The government sets a hard rule early on. Only issue as much paper as you have coin reserves to back. For a while it works beautifully. A shipment that once needed 40 men carrying coin strings can now move with a single merchant carrying a folder of notes. Word spreads beyond China's borders, through Central Asian traders, through the Silk Road. But this technology, paper standing in for gold and silver, backed by nothing but government promise, is fragile in a way coins never were. Coins have value baked into the metal. Paper has value only as long as everyone keeps believing in it. And belief is not something you can print more of. Here's the mechanism in plain terms. The Jiaozi Bureau holds a reserve, real strings of coins sitting in a treasury. For every note printed, there's supposed to be coin backing it, redeemable on demand. The notes circulate through markets, get used for taxes, get passed between merchants who never bother cashing them in. This is the exact same principle behind every paper currency alive today. Value from trust, not metal. The Song government embeds serial numbers, issue dates, and expiration cycles. Notes are only valid for a few years before being swapped for new prints, helping control circulation. For decades, this restraint holds. But restraint is a discipline, not a law of physics. And the Song dynasty has a problem that never goes away: war. To the north, the Jin dynasty presses down on Song territory. Later, an even bigger threat rises: the Mongols. Armies cost money. Soldiers, horses, fortifications. All of it drains the treasury faster than taxes can refill it. And here's where the story turns. When a government controls the printing press, and the treasury runs dry, there's a tempting shortcut sitting right there on the desk. Print more paper. For a while, it feels like it works. In 1127, the Song dynasty is forced to abandon its northern capital entirely, fleeing south after the Jin capture the emperor himself. This new era, the southern Song, is smaller, richer in trade, but permanently at war. War, as we said, is expensive. The government introduces a new paper currency, the huizi. It's meant to work the same way jiaozi did, backed by reserves controlled in volume. But the military pressure never lets up. Every year there's another campaign, another border to defend, another army to pay. And every year, the temptation to solve the problem with a printing press gets stronger. First, the overprinting is subtle. A little more paper issued than the reserves can really back. Nobody notices immediately. Prices creep up slowly, the way they always do at the start of inflation. By the 1200s, the ratio between paper currency and actual metal reserves has become a joke. Court records show ministers arguing, warning each other the currency is losing its foundation. But stopping means admitting the treasury can't pay its armies. No government at war wants to say that out loud. This is the part of the story every economist recognizes instantly, even 800 years later. Once people suspect a currency is losing value, they stop holding on to it. They spend it fast, before it's worth even less tomorrow. That behavior accelerates the very collapse everyone's afraid of. Prices in southern Song China start rising, not gradually but violently. Historical records describe merchants demanding more and more huizi notes for the same goods, sometimes multiple times over within a single year. A string of coins that once bought a family's food for a month now barely covers a few days. The government's response? More printing. It's the only lever left. Tax revenue can't keep pace with military spending, so the printing press becomes a substitute treasury. Except every note it produces makes every other note worth a little less. By the mid-1200s, some regions are refusing huizi notes at anything close to face value. Merchants demand silver, silk, anything except the government's paper. The very innovation that made Song China the envy of the medieval world is now actively strangling it. Right as a new threat gathers on the northern horizon. The armies of Kublai Khan. In 1279, the southern Song dynasty falls completely. Kublai Khan's Mongol forces, having already conquered northern China decades earlier, finish the job. The last Song loyalists drown at sea rather than surrender, and China becomes part of the vast Mongol Yuan dynasty. Here's the twist nobody expects. The Mongols don't abandon paper money. They adopt it. Kublai Khan, ruling an empire stretching from Korea to Eastern Europe, needs a currency simple enough to move across that entire territory. And paper, under strict state control, fits perfectly. The Yuan issue their own notes, called Chao, and for a while under tighter management. The system actually stabilizes trade across an empire larger than anything the world has seen. It's into this world, decades after the Song jiaozi first appeared, that a young Venetian merchant arrives around 1275. His name is Marco Polo. And he watches something that, to a European raised entirely on gold and silver coins, seems almost like sorcery. Officials taking mulberry bark, pressing it into sheets, stamping it with the royal seal, and declaring that this paper is now money. Real money. Spendable anywhere in the empire, refusable by no one, under penalty of death. Marco Polo is stunned. Years later, back in Italy, sitting in a Genoese prison after being captured in a war between rival city-states, Marco Polo dictates his memoirs to a fellow inmate. He describes the paper money in careful detail, how it's made, how it's enforced, how an entire empire runs on it. Europe's reaction? Disbelief. Total dismissive disbelief. His book earns the nickname Il Milione, implying it's stuffed with a million exaggerations. The idea of paper functioning as real, trusted currency simply doesn't compute for a continent that has run on gold and silver for over 1,000 years. It will take Europe until the late 1600s, nearly 400 years later, to seriously experiment with paper banknotes of its own. China had already lived through the entire life cycle. Invention, adoption, abuse, and collapse. And China's paper money story doesn't end with the Song or the Yuan. When the Ming Dynasty rises in the 1300s, they try paper currency too, the Daming Baoqiao. Same optimism. Same early success. Same outcome. Overprinting, inflation, collapse. By the 1400s, the Ming government has essentially abandoned paper money altogether, retreating back to silver for centuries. 3 separate dynasties. 3 separate attempts. 3 separate collapses. All driven by the same irresistible temptation. When you control the printing press and you're short on money, printing more feels like a solution, right up until it becomes the problem. So here's the real story. China didn't just invent paper money. It invented, and then lived through, the entire boom and bust cycle that every fiat currency risks even today. Brilliant innovation, genuine prosperity, then the slow-motion temptation to print past what the economy can bear. Marco Polo saw the future, and nobody in Europe could imagine it was real. It took the West 4 centuries to catch up. And it's still relearning the same lesson the Song dynasty learned the hard way. Money only works as long as people believe in it. If you enjoyed this dive into the world's first currency crisis, subscribe for more stories where history and money collide. And let me know in the comments which empire's economic collapse you want covered next.